In this video, we will review major electrolytes and electrolyte balance in the body. So our body contains a large variety of ions, and we call these electrolytes, and these perform a variety of functions in the body. Some ions can help with the transmission of electrical impulses along cell membranes in our neurons and muscles. Others help stabilize protein structures and enzymes. Some aid in releasing hormones from endocrine glands. They can affect membrane permeability. And electrolytes can serve as a buffer of our body fluids, such as bicarbonate. And electrolytes such as sodium are involved in the movement of fluids between the intracellular and extracellular components. This chart shows common electrolytes that are measured clinically. Remember that all of the electrolytes that we measure in the clinic are looking at our plasma or our blood values. And so we're looking at the extracellular fluid. And again, remember, it's important to remember the concentration of our electrolytes, as movement of these electrolytes are often driven by the electrolyte concentration. Most of the electrolytes we get through our diet. They're absorbed through the digestive system. We do store calcium and phosphate in our bones and our teeth, and so we have this mineral reserve for these two ions. If we need calcium or phosphate for other functions, we can then break down bone tissue to supply the blood and other tissues with these two minerals. Phosphate is an important and normal constituent of nucleic acids. And remember, that's part of ATP, for example. And so blood levels of phosphate will increase whenever nucleic acids are broken down. We excrete these electrolytes mainly through the kidneys, with some amounts in sweat and feces are also lost. But sometimes excessive losses can cause imbalances. So for example, excessive sweating, or excessive and long-term diarrhea, or excessive and long-term vomiting can cause imbalances in some of our key electrolytes. We're going to look at regulation of a few of our key electrolytes. So we're going to start with the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. This system can regulate our sodium and our potassium. Sodium and potassium are regulated in the collecting tubule of the kidney. Sodium is reabsorbed by the kidneys, where potassium is excreted by the kidneys. And these are primarily controlled by two hormones that are involved in this system, which are angiotensin 2 and aldosterone. So let's do a quick run through of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. First, we have to start with factors that are going to activate this system. This can include a decrease in blood pressure. It can be caused by a decrease in blood sodium or an increase in blood potassium. It can also be caused by an increased activation of that sympathetic nervous system, so your fight or flight response. When the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is activated, the kidneys will release a hormone called renin. Our liver produces a hormone called angiotensinogen, which is activated by renin into angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 will then travel to the lungs, where it encounters a receptor called angiotensin converting enzyme, or ACE. Angiotensin converting enzyme converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. You may have heard of a drug called an ACE inhibitor. An ACE inhibitor will stop the action of angiotensin converting enzyme, decreasing the amount of angiotensin 2 produced and thus reducing blood pressure. So back to angiotensin 2, activation of angiotensin 2 can lead to a number of outcomes. At the kidney, angiotensin II can constrict the efferent arteriole at the glomerular level, and it can also increase activity of the sodium-hydrogen exchange system. Angiotensin II can go to the posterior pituitary and signal the release of antidiuretic hormone. Angiotensin II can constrict the vascular smooth muscle, increasing blood pressure. Over the long term, though, that can cause high blood pressure or hypertension. Angiotensin II can also go to the hypothalamus and make us thirsty. And then what we're going to focus on here, angiotensin II travels to the adrenal cortex, and it is going to stimulate the secretion of aldosterone. So again, the production of angiotensin II will then lead to aldosterone. So aldosterone is secreted by the cortex of the adrenal gland, which are located right behind the kidneys. And we're going to see how aldosterone stimulates sodium and water reabsorption in the nephrons. So if there is too much blood potassium or too little blood sodium, we can activate aldosterone from this adrenal cortex to help regulate that. Aldosterone, once released, will travel to the kidney, and it will go to the distal tubule of the kidney. And it is going to hold on to sodium, and sodium has a best friend, and that's water. And wherever sodium goes, water follows. So aldosterone reabsorbs or holds on or saves our sodium at the distal tubule, and then water follows. So that's going to increase the sodium and increase our blood volume. At the distal tubule, when you hold on to sodium, you exchange it for potassium. And so by holding on to sodium, you're going to excrete your potassium and get rid of potassium. So with aldosterone, you're able to regulate your sodium levels and your potassium levels at the level of the kidney. And then finally, let's look at regulation of calcium and phosphate. And so this is through a hormone called the parathyroid hormone. This comes from your parathyroid glands, which are located behind your thyroid glands. This also requires calcitriol, which is called dihydroxyvitamin D, or let's just call it vitamin D, and another hormone called calcitonin. Parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, and calcitonin are all released or synthesized in response to blood levels of calcium. So what happens is that parathyroid hormone is released from the parathyroid gland when there's a decrease in blood calcium. This hormone will activate cells called osteoclasts that break down the bone matrix and release calcium and phosphate. Parathyroid hormone also goes to the gut, and it increases the GI absorption of dietary calcium by converting vitamin D into calcitriol, which is an active form of vitamin D that we have to have in our intestine to absorb that calcium. So we're going to break down the bone. We're going to go to the intestine, activate vitamin D, and bring in that calcium. And we're going to go to the kidneys and hold on to calcium. So parathyroid hormone raises blood calcium by inhibiting the loss of calcium through the kidneys. And it also holds on to phosphate. So we want to, it gets rid of phosphate, it increases the loss of phosphate through the kidneys. So all of this holds on to calcium. Now calcitonin comes from the thyroid gland whenever the calcium levels are increased. This will increase the activity of the osteoblasts. Osteoblasts build bone. And so that's going to remove calcium from the bone, and then you'll take some of that calcium from the blood. So in sum, to hold on to calcium, we're going to break down our bone, we're going to absorb more at the kidneys, and we're going to absorb more in the intestines. If we have too much calcium, we're going to build more bone and pull that out of the blood. And that is a brief overview of some of our most important electrolytes and how we regulate them.